as Matt said, I'm Ravin. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Credal, along with Jack, who's in the audience. So Jack and I, before we started Credal almost exactly a year ago, before we did that, we were both actually working on deploying AI in classified environments. For me, it was actually healthcare. For Jack, it was the DoD. And we both we were already friends at this point, and we both kind of came to this realization simultaneously that obviously, because we were exposed to the tooling a little bit earlier than most folks were, this was incredibly powerful stuff. But we also realized, because of where we were sitting, that there was going to be a huge issue with helping enterprises, people, institutions figure out how to trust AI, right? And really, ultimately, we came to the realization that figuring out how to deploy this technology and make it actually valuable for the world was really going to hinge on how do we build the technology and how do we build the capability that will give enterprises, governments, and people the ability to trust the technology such that they're actually willing to use it in the problems that really matter. So that was the problem that we set out to solve. And what we learned pretty quickly was, there are a lot of different kind of pillars, if you like, or like legs of the stools that sort of undergirded why people found it difficult to trust. So we heard from the Moody's folks a little bit earlier, like one of those big pillars is data privacy, right? How do you manage the privacy of the information that's going out to the LLM, but do so in a way that doesn't completely wreck the end user's experience? So that was one big pillar. And then we pretty quickly found after that there was an even more difficult technical problem, which was that organizations like Moody's and like, the Fortune 20, 200 have spent 10 years, 100 years building these really complicated access control patterns in their various systems, right? SharePoint, Jira, Confluence, the weird company database that you acquired from the startup that you didn't really mean to acquire, but you did, right? And managing the access controls of all of that data in conjunction with, the system that you're building, the copilot that you're building, is actually this huge nightmare. You can try and re-engineer all of Microsoft's permissions, and then re-engineer all of Atlassian's permissions, and then re-engineer the permissions of the random system you acquired. But that's going to be years worth of development effort. And with technology like this, you don't have years. You need to actually get it into people's hands sooner. And so we really set out to solve those two issues, right? How do we enable organizations to bring in the data from all these different systems while still reflecting the access controls and permissions that, those systems had encoded in themselves for many years, but also manage that data in ways that were consistent with the privacy expectations and the InfoSec expectations, as we heard about earlier, that the large enterprises need. So thanks, Matt, for bringing in people that talked about InfoSec and data security for me. I'm sure that's exactly why you did it. But I'm just going to jump into a demo to explain how we actually try and approach that. So what Credal actually is, right, is it's a developer retrieval platform that's really focused on solving the access controls and privacy problems. So our customers typically build many different retrieval applications on the Credal platform, and we'll deploy them into various different environments. We're going to look at a very, very simple environment here, which is Slack, and we'll sort of peel back the onion and see how did that application get made as we do. So I'm going to ask a really, really simple question to start with. What does Credal do? And as you can imagine, in a channel like Ask Anything, you really can get pretty much any question, right? And so what we found is that if you try and build one retrieval platform, one retrieval application to rule them all, it's really difficult to actually answer every different possible question that an end user can get. And so what we've had to do, what we've seen our customers do actually, is build many different applications that can solve different types of questions, and then build a routing layer that directs the query to the right end application. So as you guys saw, or maybe didn't see because you're distracted by me talking, Credal like kind of gave us a little brain emoji to tell us that we were thinking and directing this question to the right copilot. And in this case, you can see we've got like an answer from a Credal information copilot that, let's see, how do we do? Yeah, we did actually. Yeah, this is a like really good job actually of describing what I said. In fact, it's exactly what I said, but just instead of taking 5 minutes to say it, took like 2 sentences. So the first job to go will probably be mine, I guess. So this is like a really simple question, right? And let's say we want to drill in a little bit into the actual information security component of this question. We can actually drill in and say like, what security certifications and controls does Credal provide? And I'm making it a little bit hard for myself on purpose because I can't spell, but there you go. And what we'll see this time is this is like a slightly more granular question than the one that we asked last time. So we want to do that routing. And again, because we're asking a question that might be sensitive, in order to retrieve the data here, I need to actually do an access control check that I, as Ravin, actually have access to the relevant information that the AI needs to answer this question. And again, we're going to peel back the onion a little bit more in a second about how that actually happens. But what you'll see is, we get this little brain emoji that tells us that we're doing the work, right? Retrieving the data, bringing it back, doing the access controls check, sanitizing any of the PII or sensitive information, masking that from the LLM. And then when the LLM response comes back, we're like unmasking that. And we can see, pretty much straight away, this time, the thing I want to call out is like, we saw last time we had the Credal information copilot answer. This time we have like an InfoSec specialist copilot providing a response. And, we get more into the details of what security controls at Credal really mean, access controls, as we talked about, data encryption, so on and so forth. So let's peel back the onion and let's see how this actually gets made. Now, as many of you guys probably already realize, that the first step of building a retrieval platform is actually bringing the data in. And that's where the access controls of the underlying data become really, really important. So I'm going to go ahead and just create a new document collection here. We'll give it a really simple name, demo, product collection, product document collection. And I'll call it like 37 because I've done this demo so many times. I don't want to like repeat the collection name. And, these different companies, actually one of the things that I thought was interesting that Gustavo was talking about earlier is, a lot of folks already have investments in technologies like Pinecone, Milvis, Weaviate, et cetera, et cetera. We're trying to avoid like competing with all of those investments. So we really just support like whichever vector store our customers have already invested in. We use Milvis internally, but a lot of folks obviously use these other tools as well. And I can kind of give this document a collection name, and I'm going to go ahead and create this document collection. And now that the collection is created, I've got to actually bring the data in, right? And this is where the sort of underlying permissions of these source systems can get really, really hairy. Credal kind of has out-of-the-box connectors to all of these, as well as like APIs that allow you to connect with more sort of bespoke systems. Just going to pick one for now, and we can sort of go from there. So when you're selecting the documents that you actually want to connect here, there's obviously, entire drives, folders, so on and so forth. Credal basically will kind of handle whatever you sort of throw at it. In this case, I'm going to pick like our product planning shared drive. This is all notional data, by the way, just so you know, but I can just paste the link in for this entire drive. And if this was a SharePoint, it would work exactly the same. If it was a Salesforce tenant, it would work exactly the same. It's just going to bring the data. And the key point is it's going to bring the data in a way that then allows us to mirror the source permissions of that system. So in this case, we're using Google Drive, which means we have to traverse which folder is this drive in, which folder is that in, which people have permissions to that folder, which groups have permissions to that folder, which groups are defined in your SSO, and how does that map to the groups that you've defined in Google, right? All of that is this huge engineering problem that typically most companies don't actually want to reinvent themselves, but is actually a pretty essential component to delivering a valuable product. So that's really like one of the core pillars of what Credal tries to make really easy. We'll obviously decide like how frequently we want to sync this data. Maybe we want it every hour. Maybe we want it every few minutes. We can even just kind of set our own custom cron job for this if we want. And great. Now the data is synced and we know exactly who has access to this data. And if we want to do retrieval, we can actually just test what retrieval looks like in this system. So let's say we go, what's a good question? When does Credal plan to support cohere re-ranking? So this is going to go away, check all of the files in the Google Drive, do the classic kind of vector search that we talked about, but importantly, it's going to respect the permissions of the data that I have access to. So if Jack, the CTO, has secretly got a document that says actually it's not going to be for a really long time, I'm not going to find out that answer, unfortunately. So we can see we get like a pretty high quality response. We get the scores, the metadata, the time. So if you want to do post-processing on the retrieval, you absolutely can, of course. And then what you want to do is you connect this document collection to one of those co-pilots that we saw earlier. So let's see if I can pick an interesting one. This is a pretty simple one, actually. The Credal Employee Benefits co-pilot. So we're a pretty new company. I had to figure out how health insurance works. That was scary, especially for a Brit, right? Who's like not even a consumer of health insurance until I came to America. So, God, that was really hard. Why do you guys do this to me? I don't know. Yeah, got it. The short version is that I can connect this collection to this co-pilot. And then once I've done that, I can kind of deploy it anywhere I like, over API, in Slack, through the Credal web UI. And if, let's say, I want to deploy this one into an internal application, we use Retrieval for a lot of our internal apps. So if I ask a question like, what is the maximum I can contribute to my HSA as a 34-year-old? What that's going to do is basically hit this co-pilot, and it's going to ask this question. It's going to look through only the documents that I myself have access to, retrieve the relevant information, feed it to the LLM, again, sanitize all the PII out of the inputs, and then unmask them from the outputs. And that's the sort of core. You get like a pretty straightforward response from my data deployed into like my existing internal tooling, like in this case, Retrieval. So that's a pretty simple example. I just want to finish. Okay, so, we get audit logs and visibility into exactly what's happening. I just want to finish on one last thing. So this is obviously a VC hosted event. And as an entrepreneur, it's my solemn duty to tease our VCs. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about Guardrails, right? We had a little bit about jailbreaking AI and how do you kind of prevent that. One of the things that our customers typically really need to do is ensure that these tools are used in ways that they're consistent and they're comfortable with. So if I want to come in here and ask what's a funny and kind of mean joke I can tell about venture capitalists to end my demo on, it's going to go away. It's actually going to check this against the acceptable use policies that our customers have uploaded, right? And so this is the sad bit. You're actually never going to find out what the AI would have said. But you can see that the idea is you can upload your policies and have them automatically reflected in the data. So yeah, that's the essence of Credal. Just to wrap up, the really difficult engineering problems that we help our customers solve are like understanding how do you reflect the access control permissions of your source systems, and then how do you manage the PII and the acceptable use concerns that every large enterprise has when they're deploying these tools. Thank you.